Welcome to another episode of the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, your weekly dose of news and advice that comes to your pocket every single Saturday. Holding it down, here we got Mac, Mark, Scott, and Landon. Enjoy today's show. Hey, welcome into the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Now, if you guys are just finding us for the first time, go ahead and click that red button down below. It's called the subscribe button. It's free to you, and it really helps us out. If you don't want to do it right now, listen to what we have to say, and then consider doing so at the end of the video. Really help us out. You can also get us on social at snap_fantasy on Instagram and Twitter. Now, who are we talking about today? None other than Deandre Swift, running back out of Georgia. Now, Deandre Swift is a polarizing figure. He was the number one ranked running back pre-draft by a lot of analysts. And I looked into Deandre Swift early in the fall, and I followed him throughout the season, and I just didn't see it. I didn't see what everyone was talking about. Yeah, he ran a decent 40 time, 4.49, came in a little bit smaller than I thought, 5'8 and a quarter, 215 pounds. He is only 21 years old. However, his burst score, not that great. Ranks 62nd percentile. And when you watch the tape with Deandre Swift, it's apparent that, yes, he is elusive, but he's shifty, he's elusive, but he's not explosive. And that's kind of what I want to talk about later in this video. But I'm going to kick it over to one of my co-hosts, Mark. And I want to know, is Deandre Swift a big enough pick in the early second round to take the job from Kerryon Johnson going into 2020? Because I'm just not sure.
And rightly so. That's a fair question. There were two things in the last 365 days that made me sick as a Kerryon fan. It was when he got banged up in 2019 and when the Lions picked Deandre Swift in the second round. Let me talk about this Lions organization and owning running backs. They just have something in the water out there. Not talking about Flint, Michigan here, but in Detroit, we've got guys that are always touted to be this high, the next Barry Sanders, but no one can really even manage it. No one can, for 70 straight games, they couldn't put up 100 yards on the ground. And now they find Kerryon Johnson a couple years back, and I loved him and kind of wanted him everywhere. He's a really dynamic player. But by them adding Deandre Swift, I don't see anything but a 1A and 1B situation. This is a really full running back room, too. Aside from those two names, you've still got Ty Johnson, you've still got Bo Scarborough, and those are kind of, gadget pieces that can be used on an offense. Now, when Matt Patricia talks about this team, he doesn't really specify what direction he's going to go with it. So it's really hard to get a temperature on who he likes better out of these two guys. I mean, for me, Kerryon was a great piece, but he had a really disappointing 2019 season. And then by adding Deandre Swift, to me, I look at this almost like a lose-lose situation for both backs. I'm sorry to say, but I do really like Deandre Swift, but it's just not the perfect fit for anyone. This is a team that has struggled with mediocrity in the running game. And while they have some really clever and good elusive players at wide receiver, I just don't really know how much I believe in either one of these guys. So I don't know. To me, I just feel like this might be another sub 500 year for that team as a whole. And then when you're trying to pick who to start week to week out of these two running backs, I would take Swift, but I don't think I would have them anything above a flex position right now. And it would be it's just a full running back room in a city that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence fantasy-wise. So let me kick it to someone who may have a little more optimism behind this than I do.
Sorry to disappoint you, Mark, and I really hate to just pile on the Deandre Swift pile here, but I actually think that at the current draft ADP that I've seen Swift going, even in my own dynasty rookie drafts, I really think that this guy could be a potential grenade for the 2020 and maybe even 2021 season for guys that are hoping that he is going to take command of that. running room quickly. You already touched on the fact that Detroit just can't seem to get it done with their running backs, and it's not for a lack of talent. I hate to say it, but I think it has something to do with the system, and I don't see 2020 being that different. Now, with the talent of Kerryon still there, I think the best you can hope for would be some sort of 50-50 split. You mentioned 1A, 1B. Now, in football, that could actually work out well for the Lions, as they both have a real history of injuries. The problem is we're a fantasy football show, not an NFL show. And as you all know, there is only maybe 1 or 2 tandems of an Ingram with a Kamara. Now, there we remember the days where you could start 2 running backs and you actually could have a very good fantasy day on either side. That is not the case for about, I'd say, 80% of other committees. And I think that's the best case scenario, at least for 2020, that you're looking at. Now, you might say, what if Kerryon goes down week 2? Well, you've got yourself a starting back. And in normal situations, you'd say you've got yourself a clear-cut RB1. You have to remember that Swift, even in college, had what was considered a relatively light workload for a starting running back, and he still was able to pile on a bunch of significant injuries. So the question then becomes, even if he's given the opportunity early on in his career, will his body be able to take what is a very abusive NFL schedule if he's getting the type of carries that a lead bell cow back gets? So, hate to pile on, but he is firmly on my do not draft list for 2020. Like any of these highly skilled running backs in Dynasty, in a couple years, 3, 4, he could really be killing it. But if you're looking for anything in 2020 or even 2021, please look somewhere else. Lando?
You guys keep piling on the hate, and I just can't do it anymore. I can't take this hate for Deandre Swift. I think you guys are being unfair to him. I understand that it's kind of a messy workload. That Matt Patricia coaching tree comes from the Belichick tree. They use about those committee backfield, whether it's Sony Michel and James White. I mean, it could be DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson. And with Matt Stafford back, like, there is so much more upside in this offense. And Kenny Golladay is that tried and true wide receiver 1. They've got TJ Hawkinson. I think this offense can turn itself around. They could have a better defense, but that's not good for fantasy. So we want teams to score on them. They're with the Vikings. They're with the Packers. Both teams should score a lot of fantasy points, which means they should be in passing down scenarios. That will benefit DeAndre Swift. It won't take long for him to get that workload and that come from behind workload. A good rapport with Stafford. I do think there's a high chance that they move Kerryon Johnson this year. He's still a 22-year-old running back, 23-year-old running back, and they could trade him. And then once DeAndre Swift is the bell cow back, he reminds me of what David Johnson was when he got that opportunity. Super shifty, great pass catcher out of the backfield. He could be a league winner if you take him in the correct round. If the narrative around DeAndre Swift and that whole backfield, I guess, is so negative, it's so poor, stay away from the Lions, don't draft the Lions, you're going to get a great value on this guy. You're not going to draft him as your a top 2, top 3 flex position. You're going to get him as your 6th, 7th, 8th round pick. And that could be the absolute league winner upside that you need in fantasy football. Like I said, you don't play fantasy for the safe play sometimes. You have to play to win. And I think DeAndre Swift has every characteristic, skill, speed, shiftiness to win your fantasy leagues if he gets that opportunity. Now, there's risk involved. I get it. But this is what we want in fantasy football. You guys are crazy. I get the risk aversion. You want to go with a steady workload, but I think there's a chance that Swift could be a league winner.
Landon wants the swift route to the top, but what he needs is a swift kick in the pants.
Ew.
I don't know.
Listen, I gotta say, you guys are turning into me, long-winded and intelligent. Look, I think Matthew Stafford coming back to this team means good things for the wide receivers. Matthew Stafford, a healthy Matthew Stafford, is a mid 500 to low 600 attempt quarterback. In his heyday, saw 700 plus attempts in a single season. Guy likes to air it out, got a great arm, and they've really surrounded that wide receiving core with a lot of great pieces. So I'm not so sure that this, historically, over the last 5 years, 1,600 yard rushing team, like 100 per game, is going to be able to get it done, regardless if they have 1 or 2 or 3 backs that they're going to use. Like Landon said, Matt Patricia comes from the Belichick tree, going to use a committee style back. And for me, this piecing of Deandre Swift with Kerryon Johnson kind of makes sense in a tandem. You're talking about 2 players that have injury history. Deandre Swift has the ankle and nagging foot problems. He also had groin surgery in the spring of 2019. So those are things that aren't talked about enough. And we all know Kerryon's story over his first, rookie and sophomore years. He hasn't been able to stay on the field consistently. So working them in a tandem as an efficient duo is probably best for their longevity. And I also don't think that either of them is a true 3-down back. Now, wrapping it up, a couple things, positives for Deandre Swift. I think he is a really solid pass catcher, and that's how I think he could be used. Theo Riddick in this offense for years was a very valid PPR asset, and someone could come in and be the pass catching role. And I think Deandre Swift suits that. Now, in a limited sample size, we didn't see a whole lot of that at Georgia with Jake Fromm. However, he caught 92% of catchable targets thrown his way last season. So really sure-handed, natural catcher. I like that about him. He also has shown to have great vision. He's patient enough, and when he sees a hole, he runs through it hard. He was the beneficiary of the second best offensive line in college football at Georgia. So we'll see what happens when he gets into a less optimal situation in Detroit. Last thing I would say, the criticism I have for him is his yards after contact is not impressive. And when you look at him as an elusive runner, yes, he has a solid juke move. Yes, he has a solid spin move, but he is unable to run through contact and often goes down on soft contact. So that's why I just don't think he is a true 3-down back. But I think with him and Kerryon as a duo, it could really work out. Now listen, 70% of you that are watching these videos are not subscribed. And if you are one of those people, please, it really helps us out. Just hit that little red button down below, leave a comment, maybe throw us a like if you like some of these takes on Deandre Swift. And let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Helps out the channel. If you guys are wanting to see how I put Deandre Swift into a Lions uniform, because you clicked on this thumbnail, you clearly understand what's going on here. If you want to see how I did that, there is a link right here to Deandre Swift and my photoshopping of him in a jersey swap. So if you want to see how I did that time-lapse footage, go ahead and click on that little card right there. It'll take you over to our video, and catch us later. We are talking Jalen Reagor next. Lots of rookie content on this channel. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.